So thank you again for joining us for the OSBM Administered Grants Audit Requirement Specific webinar. We'll go over some general reminders as well as a broader overview of audit requirements for any OSBM administered grants. My name is Cole Jordan. I am the grant manager here for OSBM, and then we've got the rest of the team: James Chatham, Amy Perry, Christy Doy, and Carmen Warren. So I appreciate them being here as well. And we'll go ahead and get started. So this is the general overview. We'll talk about the reporting levels and audit requirements, a little bit about fund management, document maintenance, how you submit those audits through Smartsheet. We'll do a brief demonstration, and again at the end we'll open it up to a Q&A. So please go ahead and add any questions you may have in the little question mark box in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end. All right, so all of this is based off of a couple of things. First off, the state statute that oversees the administration of funds by state agencies. The administrative code, which was recently updated July 1st of 2024. And this is where the audit requirement lives and what we reference in your grant contracts. There's also the state budget manual, and then the reference of the threshold amount for state grants refers to the federal threshold amount. So we are trying to simplify things by making the amount of funds that you receive align with the same amount on the federal level. So we'll get into that in a minute. But just some general responsibility reminders. You are required to maintain reports and accounting records that support the allowable expenditure of state funds. Both you as a grant recipient and any of your subrecipients shall make available all reports and records for inspection by the awarding agency, which would be our office, but also the state auditor, and that is for oversight, monitoring, and evaluation purposes. So grant funds, in terms of holding your funds and having appropriate fund management, they should be held in a separate, all of your grant funds, each grant individually should be held in a separate fund and accounting structure within your central accounting or grant management system. That shall include any interest earned on those funds. If you do not have a fund accounting system or an accounting structure that allows you to do that, then you should open up a different account for your grant funds so they're held completely separately, and you never have to worry about combining other sources of funds and not being able to track your expenses appropriately. All expenses shall be managed in a detailed manner that supports fully transparent accounting of all financial transactions associated with this grant funding. Again, these are state grant funds. We are here to help you make sure that these funds are used appropriately. And so please let us know if there's ever any issues, but you should have an invoice, a receipt, some sort of supporting documentation to show how every expense was made using your state grant funds. So again, we fall into this quite often with our grantees. Do not commingle, which means combining your grant funds with any other sources of funds at any point. If you are in a situation where you've done that, just make sure to go ahead and separate it out as quickly as you can. All right, so reporting requirements for all grantees. All of grants received by organizations must certify that funds received or held or used were used for the purposes for which it was awarded. You have to provide an accounting of all funds received, held, used, or expended. So this is all done through your quarterly performance report and the expenses you submit during the reporting periods. And then thirdly, you have to report on activities and accomplishments undertaken by you as the grant recipient, including reporting on any performance measures. So again, this is included. You tell us about the activities and accomplishments on your quarterly performance report every quarter. The one addition and what we are here to talk about today is the Yellow Book audit. So as I mentioned before, the administrative code changed in July of last year. Basically, the amount that of state grant funds that requires you to submit a Yellow Book audit increased. And it increased to try and match the federal level of requirements. So there's a little bit of a difference in this last fiscal year because the federal government also increased theirs. So as of any fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2024 or before, the audit threshold amount was $500,000. So if you had $500,000 in total of state grant funds, you were required to submit a Yellow Book audit for each of those fiscal years. Now, moving forward, if you happen to have a fiscal year ending July 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2024, that threshold amount was $750,000. The federal government's threshold at the time was $750,000, and on July 1st, 2024, we changed the administrative code to match the Fed. So if you happen to have a fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024, then your threshold for that fiscal year is $750,000. That's a very small group of people that would fall into that category. So for most of y'all, you can just ignore that. But if you have a fiscal year ending October 1st, 2024 or later, the new threshold is $1 million. So for the majority of our grantees, your fiscal year ends June 30th or December 31st. In that scenario, for your 24-25 year, or if you're December's fiscal year end, then your new threshold amount is $1 million. The biggest thing to remember is two things. It's the total state funds, total state grant funds. So if you receive $500,000 from the state budget office in your fiscal year, but then you received $500,000 from another state agency within that same fiscal year, then you would still need to submit a Yellow Book audit. And that is whether you received, held, or expended. So while we are matching the federal threshold amount, like the dollar amount, the one difference that still remains is that we still require a Yellow Book audit even if you just received that money. So it's not based on your expenses like the federal government has. And when you are deciding on what Yellow Book audit to submit, there are two different types. So there's a single or program specific audit, and either one is totally fine. And we'll talk a little bit further about what that means in a second. But just to break it down in another way of looking at it, if your fiscal year end was June 30, 2024 or before, then if you received, held, used, or expended $500,000 in total state grant funds within your organization's fiscal year, then a Yellow Book audit is required for each of your grants. If you happen to fall into this very tiny timeline where your fiscal year ended between these two dates, then that fiscal year is $750,000. Moving forward, if your fiscal year ends October 1st, 2024 or later, then the new threshold is $1 million in total state grant funds that are received, held, used, or expended. And that's within your organization's fiscal year end. So say my organization ended their fiscal year December 2024. If I received, held, used, or expended $1 million or more, then I would need to submit a Yellow Book audit. So Your Yellow Book audit, if you are required to submit one, is due within 9 months of your fiscal year end. We know it can take some time for auditors to prepare that information, so you have 9 months to submit it. So for example, if your fiscal year ended in June, you have until the end of March to submit it. If it were December, you have until the end of September. If you find that your auditor is taking longer or things aren't going to be turned in time, just reach out to your grant administrator. We're happy to work with you. We totally understand that some things can come up out of our control. All reports, including your Yellow Book audit, are uploaded using Smartsheet. You can pay for your Yellow Book audit with your grant funds. And most full service CPA firms will be able to assist you with an annual Yellow Book audit. You can choose the firm. And then a Yellow Book audit is the same thing as a general accepted government auditing standards. So kind of like a little cheat sheet here. A lot of times what happens is your auditor may have some questions and they'll communicate to you as the grant recipient, and then you'll come to us and we're all kind of speaking different languages. It's a pretty simple process, and your auditor should understand what we're looking for. If there are issues, please feel free to come to us. But these are kind of like the main things that you want to be aware of. So a Yellow Book audit is just the type of audit that that is required. So it's like a short name for general accepted government auditing standards. What that means is that they're going to both audit your finances for your grant, but they're also going to audit the compliance. So are you holding your funds in a separate bank account or a fund accounting structure? Do the expenses and reports that you've submitted follow what has actually occurred? So that is the type of audit and how they are auditing your information. We have a compliance supplement document on our website. It's a PDF which you can give to your auditor, and that should be very helpful for them in understanding what we need. And then there are two different levels of a Yellow Book audit. So a program-specific audit is going to focus on your grant funds themselves. It's not going to look at your whole organization. It's just going to look at the grant funds. This is a much more cost-effective option. If you find that your CPA firm is charging you more than $10,000, you probably want to go somewhere else. What we're finding is a lot of these larger CPA firms aren't necessarily giving you that cost-effective program-specific audit. So a lot of times we'll recommend reaching out to someone local to your area. A single audit, however, audits your full organization. So sometimes like for our counties and municipalities, you're already having a single audit done for your organization. If that is the case, that will certainly suffice as fulfilling your audit requirement. Just submit that and make sure the grant funds are included in the scope of the audit, which just means that within that single audit, they also audited the grant funds, and you can turn that in. If you need to find a CPA firm, the state treasurer's website has a lot of resources there. So again, just a reminder on supporting documentation, because you're not submitting that during the reporting process. You are required to maintain all supporting documentation for your grant for up to 5 years. So invoices, timesheets, receipts, make sure you've got that all held in one location, especially if someone else were to come in and there's like staff turnover. We see it time and time again. Just make sure you're saving everything in one location so it can be easily accessed should our office or the state auditor request it. So to that point, all grant recipients are subject to being audited, inspected, and monitored at any time by OSBM upon our request. and grantees must provide our office and the state auditor with access to financial and accounting records to support internal audit, financial reporting, and related requirements. So basically, our office or the state auditor may come in at any point in time and request those documents. So just make sure every dollar that's spent, you've got something to back it up. All right, so we keep talking about Smartsheet. That is this third-party platform. It looks exactly like this. It's basically a spreadsheet that you have view-only access to. So the point of contact and contract signer are the individuals that we have on file that will give the initial access to. We are happy to provide that with anyone else in your organization. Just send us an email and we will do that. But again, this is view only, so you can't type or upload anything into it. The way to do that is to click on any of these hyperlinks, which is the link to the data entry form for your grant, and that will open up your data entry form. It looks exactly like this. This is just an image of that form, and everything is submitted through this form. So when you open up this form, you start typing in information and it pops up additional questions. Once you hit submit, it'll then show up on Smartsheet and you can see in real time what you've submitted. You just have to hit refresh on this page and it'll show up. So if I were to go in and enter in my Yellow Book audit, I would choose the last submission type, and additional questions will pop up where I can attach that Yellow Book audit, which I will show you in just a moment. So yeah, we've got a lot of great resources on our website, which I will show you now, and then we will start our demonstration. So our website, it's osbm.nc.gov. That's for Office of State Budget Management.nc.gov. You can either go to Stewardship Services down to Directed Grants, or under our popular topics, you've got Directed Grants right here. And then you want to click on OSBM-Administered grants. You'll probably recognize these documents that you had to submit when you filled out your information to receive your grant funds. And then you want to click on reporting. There are some other helpful links here. Avoid fraud targeting grant funds. Make sure that you are avoiding any fraud or attempts at trying to get to your grant funds. We have come across, unfortunately, some instances where spam and other hackers have tried to get into the grant funds, and so just make sure you're aware of how to avoid that situation. And then we've got a FAQ page, frequently asked questions, but we are going to go to the reporting page. And from here, you've got a lot of great tools. It tells you everything about our process, including a link to the quarterly performance report. And then it breaks down all of the different sections, right? Like sales tax, how to report, upcoming trainings. But for this session right now, we're going to talk about the audit requirements, and you can see it right here. There's a quick preview of just a lot of the stuff that I just went over, including the compliance supplement document. So let's say your audit has been prepared, you're ready to submit it. I'm going to go to my Smartsheet. Please bookmark this. This will be what you need for the entirety of your grant cycle. A lot of times folks show up to the home page if you go to smartsheet.com and log in. If you have not been to your reporting sheet in a while, you're not going to see it down here. So you need to hit on the icon over here that says Browse, and that way you can get to your reporting sheet. So I'm going to click on Browse, and you will only see the amount of sheets that you have grants for. Ours shows all of the grants that we have, which may look a little overwhelming, but hopefully yours looks a little bit more simplistic. So I'm going to click on my example for training, which is our grant that we're going to show you. And again, this is view only, so you can't type in here. So if I wanted to submit my audit, I would click on any of these links, which is going to take me to my data entry form. And I'm going to type in my name And then the submission type I'm going to choose is annual Yellow Book audit, because that is what I'm here to upload. So you can do one of two things. You could either open a file folder and go to your wonderful folder that's holding all of your information for your grant so that you have easy access to it. And you could drag and drop it in. And right now I've got quarterly performance reports as my example, but you would obviously be submitting your Yellow Book audit. If you accidentally attach the wrong thing, you can hit X and choose a different file. Alternatively, the other option is you could just click Browse Files and it'll open up your file folder and you can choose from there. We don't have an audit template. You would not get that from us. Your auditor or the CPA firm, they all have different formatting and ways of doing things. So they're going to be the ones to provide that to you, which is why we don't have one for this example. So just pretend this says Yellow Book audit. And once you've attached it, you know you've got the right thing there. You're going to choose the reporting year. So whatever your fiscal year end is. So let's say this was for last fiscal year and my fiscal year ended in June. So I'm a little bit late. It's April. It was due at the end of March, but that's okay. I've let OSBM know. They're aware, and now I'm ready to submit it. So it was for the fiscal year ending 2024. If I wanted to send a copy of this response to my email address, I could. And that way I've got it for my files too, but I trust the process. I'm going to hit submit and I know that it's going to show up there. So if I go back to my Smartsheet, zoom out a little bit, sometimes it'll prompt you to hit refresh, but if it doesn't, you can do that yourself. Just refresh your browser. I'm going to scroll down and there I'll see it says annual Yellow Book audit. So it did attach. If I wanted to look at the attachment, make sure that I submitted the right Yellow Book audit, I could click on this paper clip and it opens up and I could click on it. So obviously in this scenario, this would be wrong because it's my quarterly performance report. But that's how you double check it. And you can scroll over to the right to see, make sure you submit it for the correct report year. And then you're all squared away. It's been submitted. OSBM will go in and review it. And that's it. So hopefully this has been helpful. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. It's a question mark box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And we'll be able to get to those in just a second. And yeah, this is our website with the reporting information. If you don't know your grant administrator and you have any questions, you can always email ncgrants@osbm.nc.gov and we'll get you in the right place.